What's going on, guys? It's MitchMotoMaths here, coming at you with the first sort of workshop video. We'll call it the Maths Garage. So this video we're going through what I bring with me on a standard single day dirt bike ride, and what I think is essential and what I think, if you don't bring it, it's not a big deal. So we'll firstly go through sort of our protective gear, then just clothing in general, our sort of emergency things, and then some other essentials. Sort of ignore all the other stuff sitting around in the garage. Let's get in our way. So let's start off with our protective gear. So first is some sort of boot, right? I'll put in a link to the description to these. These are a little bit old now, but good, solid. High. This goes up to fairly high up on my shin. The last thing you want, these, honestly, in crashes, a lower boot would be fine. It's actually, all of that sort of other materials that get flicked up by your front tire that hit you in the shin. There's been a few times where I've copped big, solid branches, along here. The boot, really strong, really sturdy, has protected me. Make sure you get one that fits you. Obviously, if it doesn't fit you, you're going to have other big problems. A good, solid boot is always necessary for a dirt bike ride. But I'm sure in for a world of pain when it happens. The next is a good, solid protective suit. I prefer the one that goes under your jersey or top, with the padding, kidney belt, all of that, but the exterior padding ones, and then the appropriate, so mine's got a kidney belt, if you can see. It's sort of been folded underneath here. So I prefer the fitted ones. The reason being is they're a bit more flexible than the ones that you can put over there. Neck brace is another good thing that I don't use, but I wouldn't, there's no harm in using a neck brace. They're incredibly important, especially if you're doing some more aggressive stuff. But yeah, so this has, say if you're getting seriously hurt in some of the stacks that you've seen, and even like with the boots, it does protect you from good impact protection. On the road, obviously you don't need something like this because you're looking more at drag protection. This is Alpine Star Bionic suit, so it's quite moisture absorbent. You don't absorbs a lot of sweat, but you do end up coming out with a bit of sweat on it. So I'll pop a link to this as well, or the closest equivalent I can find. Some of my stuff is fairly old, so it's a bit hard to find that on websites and stuff. But yeah, so good piece of bodysuit will always go down and treat, and they fit really well, so you don't really notice them once you're riding. They do, and they are relatively cheap. Like, you can get a good bodysuit for about $200 Australian these days. There's some of the cheaper protective equipment, but they're well worth the investment. So bodysuit, definitely worth bringing along with you. The next is probably the most important piece of protective equipment that you can invest in, is a helmet. Right, I went with a really big reputable brand that is on the sort of the dearer side of helmets, which is Shoei, mainly because my head is my moneymaker, so I definitely needed something that's going to protect it. I went that little bit more expensive because I wanted something light while still durable, and Shoei is a lot more you know, dirt bike helmet, I think theirs is about 150 grams lighter than most other brands, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're wearing a helmet for 3 or 4 hours at a time, it can, it can make a big difference. And then obviously I've got my GoPro mount on the helmet, but I'll talk more about that when we get across a bit further along on our little journey along here. And obviously, if you don't have a adventure helmet that has the visor on it, you're going to want goggles, right? I've just got a pair of basic goggles. They do need a bit of a clean, but you probably can't even see that in the footage. But you want something really easy to clean, really easy to do, mainly protect your eyes from dust and things like that. But I have had, when I've been behind someone, they've run over something that's flicked up and hit me right on the goggle. I've actually got a scratch on this somewhere from one of those, from the first day I had this pair. Any pair of goggles is honestly better than no pair of goggles, but if you've got one that fits nicely within your helmet, that's always a good investment. The next piece of protective equipment is some sort of knee guard or brace. I've gone with the Pod K4s. I haven't actually had a chance to try these out. I was originally either borrowing knee guards from Nathan or using these skateboarding ones that my brother had given me. I've actually still got stickers on here, so I'm going to need to take those off before I actually go out and test these. Next riding video, which will be me participating in the Sunset Rally run by Destination Dakar as a fundraiser for Michael's next Dakar adventure next year. So I will chat a bit about these in that video, so look forward to a bit of a review once I've had a bit of a feel of how they are compared to just a standard knee guard. These are FDA approved. These are medically classed knee braces. They're not just for motorsports. They are rated for other activities like snow sports, skiing and snowboarding, so I might even try them out the next time I go snowboarding. Yeah, good idea to have some sort of knee protection like I've spoken about with boots. You never know, like even without a crash, you're going to need these at some point. Right, there's something's going to get flicked up and hit you. It's just the nature of the sport. So yeah, right. The next sort of main protective thing is gloves. Right, need something on your hands. I prefer gloves with at least a little bit of knuckle. Right, these will combat, something coming up and hitting that manages to squeeze past your bike busters or your handguards. Bike busters is a brand. Yeah, gloves, protect your hands from getting cold, protect your hands from getting, stuff hitting them, and they're abrasive resistant, so if you do come off, which with the dirt bike is sort of just a natural occurrence, doesn't happen as often on road bikes, but dirt bikes you're going to crash a lot more, so you want something that when you crash, you're going to, withstand a little bit of that, so your hands come out relatively unscathed. I use Fox. I can't remember the actual brand, but Fox, it was a brand I've heard a lot of, so I just went with those. I'll put a link to these ones in the description. But yeah, they've held up pretty well. I did cut them because I was gripping too hard on the throttle, but that was easy enough to patch with a very simple stitch job. So, but gloves, I think, are a 100% you need to be wearing gloves when you're out dirt bike riding. The other knee braces, you could get away with knee guards, but I still think you should wear. And I've been, sometimes I haven't worn them, but they are definitely something to wear. Boots, 100%. If you don't wear boots out on the dirt, you're asking for trouble. If easily replace the suit with just the chest guards and things like that. I will put a whole bunch of different options. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about clothing. Right, jump bike ride. Make sure you've got something that covers you effectively head to toe, well, neck to toe, because you'll have your helmet on your head. So jersey, pants. Now some people will say, oh, you don't need jersey, you could just get away with jeans, and a long sleeve top, which you probably could, but your motocross pants or any sort of enduro style pants and your cross jerseys will breathe a lot better than any other type of long pant, and also have a little bit of extra padding in certain spaces. The jerseys not so much, but the pants definitely have a lot more padding around. I would prefer something with pockets, but that's just me. I am looking at getting a new set of these, new set of pants, new jersey eventually. But these have held up fine. These were some of the first gear I bought when I bought a bike, and they've held up really well. But they were a pretty cheap pair, but they've held up. The next is layers, right? I've got a jacket. This does, you can see here, pulls out to just be a vest. I think having extra layers for some of those colder months, I've done trips in the snow where I've needed some extra layers. Thermals you can wear underneath, but I would only wear if you're going to be in sub-zero temperatures. I've worn them when it was even as cold as 5 degrees Celsius, and have ended up being too warm and regretting my decision of wearing thermals, because you do get quite active and quite invigorated and blood pumping, and your body's quite warm when you do that. So put thermals on with a bit of caution, but having layers that are very easy and quickly to get off, like a jacket over the top of your jersey, is more than fine. I find that the vest is quite convenient. Some people will buy a jacket that they can't turn into a vest and buy a vest, which ends up costing you an extra $150, $200, $150, which is sort of a bit of an annoyance. But yeah, they're the sorts of things. I think at minimum long sleeve of everything, so you're covered from head to toe. That little bit of abrasion resistance, but I think you should invest in some sort of actual jersey, because they do breathe a lot better than standard active wear or whatever you decide to wear as your long sleeve tops. Weatherproof stuff. I occasionally bring a weatherproof jacket, but I find that these outer jackets are waterproof enough that when it is raining, that I don't feel drenched by the time I get back. Next thing is some sort of bag to carry them all in. I've gotten a new motocross specific one, but I used to just use a standard travel bag. You just want something that you can hold all your gear in one place, so it's a lot easier to get it out. Some bags even come out with platforms for you to get changed on, so if it's muddy and stuff like that, you don't have to put your socks in. The other thing is long socks is a great one. I didn't put that in my pile because they're currently in the wash. Next is sort of your emergency, you get in a tight spot stuff. Partly it's not really that, but at the same time, first aid kit. I got a really basic one that you can buy ones like this from pretty much any supermarket or auto parts store, like your Autobarn, Super Cheap Auto. I wouldn't go any bigger than this. At the point, if you need any more than what's in one of these, you're in a lot of trouble. The other thing is, don't bother putting anything that you don't know how to use. Right, there's no point, and I'm going to be going on with that sentiment again in a little bit. There's no point. If you don't know how to use it, it's useless to you. So there's no point in having it in there. I can get away with bringing a lot more obscure things because Nathan's a medical professional and I've got first aid training, so I'll be able to use a lot more than most people. Radio or GPS, right? If you get lost, you're able to contact the people you're out riding with. I've got a Reno 750, I did talk a little bit about before. If you've got a spot tracker, they're a great thing to bring outdoor riding, especially if you do some solo stuff. But I'm always with someone, most of the time it's Nathan, but some way to contact even when you don't have phone signal is a really handy thing. Not a necessity. More of a necessity is a spot tracker if you do a lot of solo stuff. But these are just handy, and having a GPS function on it and all of that is really good. And topography and stuff like that. Now, snacks. Right, some sort of food. Right, even if it is just a couple of power bars. I think it's really essential. If you end up having some issues with your bike and you're having to wait around for, an hour to get some help, you're going to want something to snack on and, get some energy into your body if you come across some issues. The next sort of thing on the same with sort of the emergency is tool roll. Right, I'm not going to go through in detail what's in here. I'm just going to quickly open it up, if I can open it up with one hand, which I can't. So let's just hold on a second. Right, so we've got a whole bunch of basic tools and spare bits, cable ties, tools. I will go do another video on once I've actually had some time to sort of fine-tune what's in my toolkit. I'll go through in a bit more detail. But yeah, once again, if you don't know how to use a tool, there's not much point carrying it. Next is a spare tube wrapped in something to protect it a little bit. I've just got it wrapped in a cloth. Some people like to compress it with duct tape or electrical tape or whatever to give that little bit more protection, but I've had no issues storing it with an elastic band and a cloth. Next is a pump, right? No point having a spare tube if you can't inflate it. I've got an electrical pump that plugs into the SAE port of my bike as well as a tire gauge, right? If you've got one pump that has an inline tire gauge, that's fine. Nathan argues that a hand pump is better, which, look, he's probably right, but all my hand pumps are huge, and they're actually all bigger than this, so carrying this is actually lighter than carrying all the hand pumps. You could get a really cheap bicycle pump and put that in, which I might eventually switch to, but for the time being, I've got the electrical one. Alright, next is sort of very specific to me, but it is essentially my video making equipment. I've got spare GoPro battery, I've got my old Hero 3 since I'm recording this on my Hero 9, which I use for actually making videos, spare SD cards. I don't have a case for them yet. I am planning to order one because for longer trips, spare SD cards, and this you could put under the sort of the emergency is a power pack with the appropriate cables for that, and then this is actually a snowboard specific screwdriver, but since I keep my GoPro bag at the top of my bag, GoPro box at the top of my bag, when I'm changing out my GoPros, I like to make sure they're nice and tight, and you can only get it so tight with the thumb screws that they give you to use stock. So I have a screwdriver. I always make sure to get one that has a cover over the screwdriver part so it doesn't pierce anything by accident, and some electrical tape just to keep handy. if I need to cover up the microphone port or anything like that, which I've learned I've had to do a few times because the sound gets distorted when it's raining because the water gets into the slot at the back of the GoPro. Does that. Speaking of water, some sort of hydro pack, right? Mine's a 2 litre Black Wolf one, alongside a backpack to store it in. I don't use a motorbike specific backpack, I use a hiking one. Honestly, if I will eventually definitely want to change this out because it can get quite, bounces around a lot. If you've ever watched any of the footage where I'm not, like, you know, Nathan's recording for me or anything, you can actually see the bag bounce around a bit. I don't like admitting that because he keeps telling me and I keep going, oh no, it's fine. But, you know, that's the store, you know, your toolkit, basically everything I've just gone through in this last little bit. Yeah, some sort of backpack with water, right? You should never go on a dirt bike ride that's not at a track without water. I just think it's not worth the risk. If you get dehydrated, it leads to making a lot of mistakes, and those mistakes end up being a lot worse than the mistakes you make in a sort of a normal scenario. Alright, next is sort of blatantly obvious, but I always bring a jerry can. This is actually a brand new one. My old one's somewhere else. I've needed a second one for the rally because we'll have no time to go get fuel in between certain sections, so we need two 10 litre lots of 10 litres. Then in terms of bike transportation, fork saver, right? This stops your bike's forks compressing and decompressing while you're transporting it. Not really essential, but worth the very small financial output of one of these in terms of saving your forks. And then obviously straps. I use, if it's just my bike on the trailer, I use 4 straps, right, strapped over the handlebar. And yeah, so that concludes the first workshop video. The cinematography of this isn't perfect, but I'm hoping the content will make up for it. This is basically everything that I bring for a standard day trip, laid out, all to go. Obviously lacking socks and thermals, but those won't go through. Doing a little bit of work on the R3, holding that off until after the rally, because I'm only temporarily putting on this wireless charger, quad lock wireless charger, so I can use my phone as a roadbook rather than the standard roadbook rallies. It was just easier since I would have had to borrow stuff off Michael, and I'll be getting to the event quite late on the Friday night, which means I'd have to be up extra early on the Saturday morning, and after having driven 6 hours there, I'm probably not going to be in the mood. I'm just got it on the trickle charger at the moment, and we'll be doing a little bit more prep on the WR before then. So yeah, thanks for watching. This ended up being a lot longer than I planned to, but I will see you next time. And hopefully I will come up with some more videos for the workshop sort of idea. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments. I will see you next time.